The Tomb of Singing Blades. This has got to be one of my favorite gaming stories of all time. Now, I'm not sure if it's just because I like to hear myself talk or if it really requires the context, but I sort of feel like this story requires a certain amount of setup, and so I'm going to give that now. If you're not familiar with Exalted, in broad strokes, there was a time called the First Age, which is sort of like a celestial golden age. It was a Confucian utopia, if you will, where there was a divine world order where everyone had a place and everyone knew it, and it was their perfect place where they were able to use their skills and abilities to their utmost. At the top, you have the Solars, who are the great kings and priests and rulers of mankind. And then their partners are the Lunar Exalted, who are their perfect equal and opposite partners. And then their advisors are the Sidereal Exalted, who are these great seers and prognosticators and spies. And then below them are the Dragon-Blooded, who are the weakest of these divinities, but they're able to pass on their gift of godhood to their descendants. And so it's easy to breed a whole bunch of Dragon-Blood. And they're the foot soldiers and the messengers and anything that requires a large number of divinities. And below them are normal humans and certain gods. Now, for a little while at least, everything's all flowers and sausages for the Exalts in creation. But eventually, the Solars start to become petty and vainglorious. They're ruled by their emotions. And the Sidereals, who have all these powers of prophecy, they decide they're going to try to predict what influence this is going to have on creation, and they come up with a bad one. And so they decide, long story short, the best way to save creation is to kill the Solars, and creation will be lessened but endure. And so their plan is to replace them with the Dragon-Blooded and then rule the Dragon-Blooded secretly from behind the throne. And it works. They kill the Solars, they imprison all their souls in this thing called the Jade Prison so they can't reincarnate anymore, and they put the Dragon-Blooded in their place, and they create a whole new religion for the world that paints the Solars as like the demons and the bad guys. And that is the status quo at the start of Exalted, except the Jade Prison has been broken, and now the Solars are starting to be reborn. The part of creation that our game took place in was a city called Nexus, which was a massive trade city at a nexus of a lot of trade routes. Believe it or not, this all does come up in the story. Now, in order to understand the campaign, you sort of need to understand the character of Lillian Goldfield, since the campaign was all but created for her. She was made for a different game that never got off the ground, and so this game was made so that there would be a campaign for Lillian to be played in. Lily is the princess of a kingdom called Goldfield, and she's arranged to be married to a prince from another neighboring kingdom, but she wants absolutely none of this because she's obsessed with the concept of true love, and so the idea of marrying someone she doesn't love is just completely unacceptable to Lily. So she goes on the run and becomes sort of a wandering heroine looking for love in all the wrong places. Lily was one of the first of the reborn Solars, so she was actually an incredibly powerful demigoddess or even goddess. She was a master of Dreaming Pearl courtesan style, which is a very powerful martial art, and she was also a magically good singer. She was probably the greatest singer in creation, in the world of our game at least. She was also a pretty complex character. I liked that Lily was sort of heroic in that she was very empathetic and she stood up for the little guy, but she was also very sort of petty and vain and self-centered, and it was an interesting juxtaposition of her heroism and her just stubborn self-centeredness. My character was called Johari, and he was one of the Sidereal Exalted I mentioned before, but he wasn't from the Bronze faction. That was the faction that did the actual betraying of the Solars. He was from the Gold faction, the faction that doesn't want to betray them and wants to help them now that they're coming back. Now, here's the part that necessitated that little primer on Exalted, because this speaks to the motivation of almost every character in the session. So, Lily has two possible futures, because she's the high priestess of the Unconquered Sun. I don't know if I mentioned that, but she's the favored of the god of the Solar Exalted. So, if she does things the way she was going to do them already, which is wander around creation the whole time looking for love and sort of solving people's problems and being a heroine, then eventually she builds up a legend. And then when the other Solars come after her, they have something to believe in. They have a place in the world. They see themselves as heroes, and they become heroes, and they bring about a second Golden Age. And so that's the future that the Gold faction wants. That's the future that my character is trying to help bring about by helping Lily and helping to spread her legend. Now, the other thing that could happen is if Lily settles down and rules Goldfield as its queen, instead of being a hero, she becomes a historical figure. And then when the Solars come back, they see their place in society not as being heroes, but as being rulers and conquerors. And so they become warlords and despots. And they hurt the world rather than creating a new golden age. But that's exactly what the Bronze faction wants, because then they'll be able to turn public opinion against the Solars, which it's already not in favor of, and then institute a huge worldwide wild hunt and once again drive the Solars from existence. So there. It's probably going to be longer than the story itself, but that's the backstory. Our story begins with Johari and Lily in Nexus, those being the only two PCs present. There were other PCs in the game, but Johari and Lily are the only ones in this story. So they're speaking with a heroic, in quotation marks, mortal, who's sort of a grave robber and who has machinations of robbing the Tomb of Night. Now, this is basically suicide. This is the world of Exalted. Just some mortal with a sword and gumption, that's not going to get you very far. They're like skyscraper-sized zombie behemoths eating and horrible chaos fairies trying to destroy all of reality. There's things beyond mortal ken in the world of Exalted all over the place because they're assuming you're playing a demigod. So being a heroic mortal, there's not a lot of heroism there. So he wanted to rob the Tomb of Night, and Lily was going to help him because she helps dumb people do dumb things. That was basically her modus operandi, especially squishy people. She had an entire entourage of squishy idiots who she would help. I don't remember all of them because honestly they were so irrelevant to my character. He did not care less. She had one of them was like a plant girl who I think was mentally damaged, and she had like a sort of childlike voice. That's the only one I remember, besides the heroic mortal that we're speaking of now. So he wants to rob the Tomb of Night, and I've got an assignment to keep Lily out of the Tomb of Night. The God of Secrets told me that the Tomb of Night and Lily, those should not mix. Now, as the God of Secrets, he wasn't particularly forthcoming with any other information. I didn't know why the Tomb of Night was bad, but, you know, it's a pretty easy assignment. Keep Lily out of it. Well, it should have been a very easy assignment. She was a very stubborn person. And once she got the idea into her head that she was going to rob the Tomb of Night, there was nothing I could really do to stop her. So my best argument, the one that I eventually won out with, was that she could pick any other solar tomb in Nexus. There were 6. Any other first stage solar tomb, and I would help them rob it if it wasn't the Tomb of Night. And so they thought that was a reasonable idea, so they picked the Tomb of Singing Blades, because, like I said, Lily liked singing. So the Tomb of Singing Blades is a tomb, like you do, with a whole bunch of blades and swords and knives and other just sharp things flying around at incredibly fast speeds and cutting through the air in such a way that it creates sort of a melody, because it's made with first stage magic, and it's pretty. So we come to the Tomb of Blades, Singing Blades rather, and we've got to find a way to get in. Now, Johari's plan, which I stand by to this day, it would have worked. It wasn't as good, clearly, as Lily's plan, but I stand by it. Was Johari and Lily are both very powerful martial artists. Lily knew Dreaming Pearl courtesan style, and Johari knew couple styles. And so I was like, what we'll do is we'll parry our way through. Like every time a blade comes at us, we'll just knock it out of the way, and we'll both rush through into the tomb. And Lily was like, well, that could work, but what about all of our other squishy people? Not just the Tomb Raider, but apparently she was going to bring her entire entourage with her, which was 4 or 5 characters who, if they got hit by a single attack, would die, so they were basically liabilities in any fight. And I was against bringing them with us, which I was generally against bringing them with us anywhere. But I thought, if we're going to do something dangerous, let's us virtually invincible gods do it, and then we'll leave these idiots out here to be idiots. Out here. And then we'll come back, and then they can have the treasure. I don't care, but they stay here and they don't die, and then we go in and it's easy. And Lily was like, "No, I'm not gonna leave my friends out here. Let me tell you a little something about friendship." And so she decided she was gonna sing me a song. And this is kind of the equivalent of using like a bluff check against a PC. But the thing is, in our gaming group, we don't get our egos attached to our characters. We really do use social skills against PCs, but we don't go, okay, yeah, that roll was that, and so that means you have to do that. We just eyeball it, and we're mature enough to actually role play what was rolled. So she's like, I'm going to sing you, and she can't. She's a supernatural singer. She can sing a song that will convince someone of something. For example, she was going to sing a song about friendship to convince me the importance of friendship, and then let her bring her stupid squishies with her. And she did. She rolled more than 10 successes. I don't remember exactly how many successes it was, but I remember it was more than 10 because the chart only goes up to 10. So it was like the greatest song of all time about friendship. And she did convince my character to let her bring the people in. But more importantly, all of the singing knives that were flying around, they started flying around in sort of sympathy to her song. And then like making the same song with their cutting of the air. And then when she approached, they just all stopped, parted, and let her through. So she got into the tomb way easier than my plan was. By attempting to sing my character into submission. At this point, Johari dropped out of Fate, which for our purposes means become invisible, because that's what he uses it for every time he does it in the story. So Johari becomes invisible in order that Lily would be seen doing this stuff alone, or at least alone with a whole bunch of squishy, useless people who weren't helping her. Which Johari would generally do any time that Lily and him did something together, just so that she would get credit, because his whole mission was to make sure her legend spread. So Lily goes into the tomb. First thing she sees, like 5 seconds in, boom, second circle demon. Which is bad news. But Lily is a very powerful combat character. Like I said, she's a master of Dreaming Pearl courtesan style, and she also has a super magical first age wedding dress that she wears everywhere that both acts as armor and gives her special abilities with Dreaming Pearl courtesan. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but she was quite a powerful combat character. She was definitely more powerful than Johari, significantly more powerful than Johari. So she sees the second circle demon, and before she can even react, bam! One hits her. She's out. Down for the count. Unconscious. He grabs her, slings her over his back, and starts going deeper into the tube. So I'm like, oh shit. So I don't wear armor. I don't have any health charms. I don't have anything that could help me not die if I get hit by something. Anyone who can knock Lily unconscious in one hit can kill Johari by looking at him. So, but I've still got to try to do something. Now, luckily, this happened so early into the adventure that all of Lily's stupid, squishy idiots, they're not going to run after the demon, so they stay at the entrance and I don't have to worry about them. Now, luckily I'm still invisible, but there's no way I can fight a second circle demon on even terms. Now, luckily, I've got one shot as far as I see it. I've got one combo that allows me to make an attack, a pretty powerful attack, that the person who's attacked is magically unaware that they've even been attacked. Not just that I attacked them, that they've even been attacked at all. So I figure if I can pull this off enough times to kill him without him noticing me, then I might be able to still save Lily. Now, unfortunately, since it's a combo, I can only do it a certain number of times. I'm not going to get too much into the mechanics of Exalted, but it costs a willpower point. I have a finite number of willpower points, way less than the essence that I would otherwise be using to power charms. So I can only do the combo a couple of times, but I figure if I can get some good rolls, and hopefully if he doesn't have too many wound points, I should be able to do enough damage to this demon to take him out with this charm. So I start to stalk behind this demon, still magically invisible, and constantly attack the same part of his head. And thanks to my combo, he's unaware that he's being attacked. He simply becomes aware of a more and more splitting headache. So the demon is dragging Lily deeper into the tomb as we do this, and eventually he reaches the treasure vault and starts trying to strip her of her wedding dress, because it's a magic first age wedding dress, not because of what you're thinking of. And so I'm still attacking his head. And every time I roll damage, it's heart-wrenching, because I have to do enough damage to kill this guy without running out of willpower. So finally I come to the last attack. It hits, and not enough damage to kill the demon. Not nearly enough. That's okay, though. That's okay, because I still can do one normal attack. You know, it'll reveal my presence, but if I kill him, it won't matter. So I pull off the one last attack, I hit, roll damage, and still not enough. The demon is hanging on by a thread, but a thread is all he needs to kill me. Now, this whole time, I was using the stance of my secondary martial art, the stealth one that I never use, instead of the one from my main martial art, because I was primarily concerned with not being seen. So, unbeknownst to me, I had some decent passive defenses against this attack. That, coupled with the demon's penalty from being so badly wounded and some lucky rolling on my end, and I'm able to dodge his retaliatory attack. So I get one last chance. I spend every mode of essence I can, and on one final desperate last-ditch measure, I hit, roll damage, and barely managed to take the bastard down. And then I ate his soul, before Lily woke up, because she didn't really approve of that kind of thing. And then when she did finally wake up and ask what happened, I told her that she found the treasure vault of the tomb on her own. And so we got all the first age treasures, and all the squishies lived, and that's my favorite gaming story of all time.